Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, I speak with Rob Kowalski, a former nightclub promoter from Baltimore, Maryland. Rob was one of the hottest male strippers in the city of Baltimore. You name it, he's done it. Rob lived a life of fame, women, money, and pretty much anything he wanted right at his fingertips. But while on vacation in Cancun, Mexico, Rob woke up from a night of sex, alcohol, and partying and realized that this was not the life he wanted to live. He recalls hearing God's voice telling him to give it all up and trust in him. As we continue our conversation, you'll discover that Rob's courage in answering not only the call to change his life for the better empowered others in his now newer and more compact circle to make a change as well. Take a listen to the entire interview. But first, cue the intro. Thank you for tuning in to the Speak, Inspire, Love, and Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Ortegon. Join us as we take a deep dive into the root cause of leader and subordinate conflict. A toxic work environment creates stress and unnecessary tension on hardworking employees whose only intention is to show up every day and do a great job. Our vision is to work with mid-level managers on becoming more of an influencer in the daily lives of their teams rather than an authority. Leaders are not recognized for how they advance individually. They are commemorated on the quality of leaders they cultivate professionally. We also use this platform to share stories of personal growth and resiliency. What was the most difficult struggle you encountered, and how did you get through it? Perspective is everything. Without further ado, Rob Kowalski, the floor is yours, my brother.
Thank you, Jeanette. I appreciate you having me on. I think I'd be, remiss not to say that Jesus is the hero for real. Like, I would probably be dead, or I would be the old scumbag in the nightclubs if not for him. I'm only here because of his calling in my life, and those forgiven much love much. So that motivates me, because I know that I should not be doing what I'm doing, and the only reason I'm doing it is because of him. So he gets all the credit for me.
Amen.
But yeah, I grew up here in Baltimore. My mom was 14 when she got pregnant with me. My dad wasn't really in the picture. He was in another state my whole childhood. Didn't pay child support, so I didn't get to see him very often. And just kind of grew, we moved around a lot. We were always pretty poor, me and my mom. And somewhere along the line, I decided that I wanted to be a male stripper when I grew up. That was like my life. That was my dream in life. From the time I hit puberty, I was pretty girl crazy. And I'm sure a lot of it was my insecurity, because I wanted to fit in. I guess I wanted to be cool, or, I thought if I was good with girls, that would validate me as being a man. Of course, I didn't recognize that was what was going on at the time, but looking back, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And so from the time I was 19 years old, I started working for an entertainment agency in Baltimore, and started doing like bachelorette and birthday parties on the weekends, became a stripper. Eventually, I was working for every entertainment agency in Baltimore. I was like the top guy in Baltimore. I was doing more shows than anybody else. And I was in the phone book, and, I was making a lot of money. I was very popular. I was having sex with a lot of women, and that was my life. It was a party. My God was pleasure. I didn't think about the God at all. Occasionally, I guess I would wonder if he was real. I'd see somebody praying, and I would wonder to myself, I wonder if anybody's really listening. And that was the extent that I thought about God. He just wasn't on my radar. And I had gone to church, a little bit as a kid. I got kicked out of a couple Christian schools, but I had never really experienced God. I never heard his voice or felt his presence. So for me, when I would see people, praying or whatever, I just wasn't sure if it was legit. I just, kind of thought, well, maybe evolution's true. I don't know. And when I was 27 years old, I went to Cancun, Mexico with a group of friends for spring break, and I had a radical encounter with Jesus. I literally got baptized in the Holy Spirit. I didn't go to church. Nobody touched me or prayed for me. I woke up from sleeping and I heard God call me. It wasn't audible, but it's just as sure as I hear you talking to me right now, I heard God call me. And he said, trust me. And basically he was like, follow me. I have a plan for you. And I did. I flew home from Cancun early. I left my friends there. I quit stripping, never stripped another day in my life. I was promoting bars at the time, nightclubs. I quit that. I broke up with my beautiful girlfriend who I was, having sex with for the last year and a half. And I was abstinent for the next 6 years while I waited for God to send me a wife. That was my, that basically I was like, I knew what I was signing up for. So I figured, okay, better let God pick her. And he had spoke some things to me that basically he told me that if I was to wait for him, that he would bring this person into my life. So, during that time I started going to church, and I was just trying to learn about him because I really didn't know much about God. And I got lonely very quickly because what happened was, apologize about that. I went from having a very active social life to having nothing to do on the weekends. And no one to do it with. I didn't really relate to church people all that well. And they weren't really doing a whole lot of anything besides going to church anyway. So I was sitting around every weekend, not knowing, again, what to do or who to do it with. So I went to a lot of movies over the next 6 years. I actually, was really believing that God was going to give me a wife a lot sooner than that. I thought it was going to be like maybe a month or two, I was going to meet somebody. And, over time, I started to become very disillusioned with the whole thing because I was like literally by myself a lot. I isolated a lot, like besides going to work and, going to the movies on the weekends, I didn't have a whole big social life, and I'm a very social person. So right. I white knuckled it for 6 years, basically just my pattern was pretty much like this is every 3 months or so, I would get really pent up with energy, and I would want to be around people so badly that I would go out to the bars, and I would meet some of my old friends, and then I would drink too much, or I would smoke a bunch of cigarettes, or a girl would hit on me and I would get scared that I was going to make a mistake sexually. And then I would stay in for another 3 months. And then that's what happened. Every 3 months, it's the same thing. And then it was like this terrible cycle. So eventually, after 6 years, I couldn't do it anymore. And I wanted to enjoy my life again. And I had not been enjoying it for so long that I just was like, I'm going to give myself some freedom and I'm going to, see what happens. And I started going out more with a friend that was going through a divorce. I bought a motorcycle and he had a motorcycle. And, I started enjoying my life again. But the problem was I started making mistakes. I started drinking too much. And then eventually I was having sex. And then I just made a mess over the next few years.
Wow.
So I rededicated my life to God in 2011, got on leadership at my church. I went through the exact same period that I went through when I first got saved, though, because every night I'm sitting around by myself renting Redbox movies, and I was like, "This is crazy! Like, how do people do this thing? Like, how do they do this life?" I'm like, "What is Jesus talking about when he says, 'I come that you might have life and have it in abundance'?" I'm like, "My life ain't abundant. My life sucks." And I was talking to a friend about it, and they were like, "Well, why don't you start organizing, some social events that give you something to do that won't cause you to get in trouble?" And it was kind of like a light bulb went off. So that's exactly what I started to do. I started to put events together. I had been a promoter before, so I knew how to do it. And I started, inviting my friends from church that were going through the same thing I was. A lot of them were lonely also on the weekends. They were bored and lonely. And I started, putting these events together, and I would invite them, and then I would invite my old friends that I wanted to meet Jesus, or I wanted to get them to church, but they wouldn't come to church with me for whatever reason. But they would come to a social event. They might come, especially if it was a little edgy, like if it was at a bar or something, they would come to those. And then once they met my friends that were Christians, a lot of times they would end up in church, and then they would get saved, and then their whole life would change. And I would be like, this is what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years. Like, so it was this weird thing that I kind of felt, tripped over. It was like, wow, okay, I can get them to social environments. And if church people or my Christian friends that are normal are there, I have to always add the ones that are normal, because it doesn't work if you're super religious. But, I have friends that love Jesus, and they were just normal. And they would be there. And when they met my old friends, a lot of times my old friends would like them, and they'd be like, these people are really nice. They're good people. And then the next thing you know, because of the relationship, they would end up in church, and then they'd hear a message, a seeker-friendly message. And next thing you know, they get saved. And so I was like, wow, this is cool. So we started organizing service events sometime, after that, not long after we started. And that was mostly because I was volunteering through my church, and I really liked the way that I felt. I was telling somebody about it the other day. Like, I didn't even view myself as being a good person up until I volunteered. I kind of viewed myself as a dirtbag. And then I started volunteering, and I liked so much the way that I felt. I was like, wow, it feels pretty good to play for the good guys, and then I kind of became hooked on that. And I was like, I need to expose my friends to this, like my old friends. Cause I know that, they thought about themselves the same way that I thought about myself. And I was like, if they feel this, they're going to like it. And that's exactly what happened. They started coming to these service events. And then next thing you know, more people's lives started changing. And that's when we really realized, okay, we have something here. We got to call it. We got to give it a name. We got to call it something. And we named it cityfam. And it's been the thing that's given me the most joy and the most pain in my life has been that organization. Because it's been like the huge passion project. It's been super painful to try to figure out how to grow it, because I know there's such a need for it. And I'm like, but also, I'm just trying to learn along the way about how to run an organization, how to run a nonprofit. And, we are gaining a lot of traction now, but it's been very painful to get to this point over the last 6 years.
Well, see, that was the test, right? I mean, I remember when I first met you several years ago, and I was like, wow, I was really shy to join the organization. I'm like, man, these are some really cool people, and I'm not a cool person.
You're cool. You are very cool. You might not see it.
I'm like, how do I fit in here? But my question to you is, and it's just amazing, because what made you give it all up? The friend you mentioned, you had that revelation when you were in Cancun, and you woke up one day and be like, look, I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to follow God. I mean, but you're talking about giving up friends, money, respect. I mean, all that. And sex. I mean, so you woke up one morning and be like, you know what? I'm done. And I mean, you are a really good looking guy. And I'm thinking all those people I'm sure the pressure is still there, but so just one day, Rob, you woke up, I'm done.
Well, it was, yes. And so many words, but I was red pilled. If you've ever seen The Matrix, when Neo takes the red pill and his eyes get open to this other reality, not other reality, the reality. Like he was living in the Matrix. That's what God did to me. Jesus said, I heard God's voice, and he's like, I have a plan for you. And once I realized that it was real and you didn't just die, because up until then I was like, my whole philosophy on life was YOLO. You only live once. Let's do it up. Let's enjoy ourselves now.
Right.
And then once I realized the truth, and so that was part of it. But the second part of it was God told me some things about the second coming. He sent me some signs, and it scared the crap out of me, because he told me, for the most part, that I know Jesus is going to come back while I'm alive. I don't know when. I'm not trying to get into prediction of the day or the month or the time or any of that. All I know is I'm going to be alive to see it, and that scared me. And also, so not only did it scare me, as I was the leader of the pack. I was the guy running the scene in Baltimore. My friends looked up to me. when I was like, okay, this is where we're going, everybody kind of followed. I brought us all together. And when I got called by God, I felt a sense of responsibility. Like I was like, if I don't follow, they're not going to follow. That means that some of them are going to go to hell if I don't follow. So I felt that. And I had this huge Moses complex where if you think about Moses, when he first sensed the calling on his life, he went out and killed the Egyptian because he was trying to take matters into his own hands. I kind of did the same thing. So when God called me, I flew home from Cancun. I went to the nightclub that I promoted in DC, and I just started talking to people about Jesus. I was like, hey, do you know God? I was like, I was pulling them out in the hallway, literally trying to like proselytize to them at an after hours club where everybody's high on drugs. And they're just looking at me like I'm crazy. But I was like, and like Moses got sent into the wilderness, that's basically what God did to me, where he's like, sat me down. He's like, you just chill out for a while. And, for probably for like 10 or 11 years, he didn't really use me at all. For 6 years, I just sat on the shelf. That's when I backslid. Even when I rededicated, that's when he first started to really use me a little bit, started as through the social and the service events. I started seeing a lot of friends come to the Lord. But yeah, for me, it was a road to Damascus experience. It was that radical. What happened to Paul with the scales? What happened to me was that crazy, where you can't not change. I mean, literally you're blind. Paul was blind for a few days. Like you can't return to your old life and pretend like it didn't happen. There was just no way. That's what, so my conversion experience wasn't normal. And I credit, God for all that, because if it was just a normal, I was at a church and I heard a message and I raised my hand, I would have probably just been like a lukewarm Christian. That's what would have happened, because I was very carnal. I still am very, the way I'm, I feel like the way I'm composed, I like everything of the flesh. I really have to battle things. So I'm sure I would have been out just kind of like, having sex with my girlfriend or, going to church on Sunday, but just kind of, one foot in, one foot out.
Lukewarm Christian.
But because of the calling, that really set the tone for my walk with Christ.
And, that's interesting that you acknowledge that, but I'm listening, Rob, and my question now, you had this revelation. Now, did you guys go to church? Because, we acknowledge God's word, we hear his word and we're convicted and, it like stays on our heart. Right. But did you even go to church as a kid? Did your mom take you to church when you guys were little and then you heard the word and you kind of left it and then in Cancun it came back to you? I mean, or you had no biblical knowledge whatsoever prior to that Cancun experience?
So what happened was my grandmother raised me till I was about 5 years old, and she was a pretty devout Christian, and she took me to Awanas and all that. So I had a little bit of it in me. And even when my mom took custody of me at 5 years old, I can remember bragging to my little friends that I had 8 stars in my crown in heaven, because I had prayed the sinner's prayer with 8 of my little friends at 5 years old. So I was an evangelist even from a young age. But when my mom got custody of me, she was not there. She didn't go to church. She really didn't have a relationship with God. And I just kind of forgot about it all, I guess, as over the next, how many ever years. And I ran the streets like she was.
But God didn't forget about you, because that seed was planted in your heart.
Well, yeah. And I don't know. I don't think, it didn't just come back to me, because like I got baptized in spirit. Like I prophesied out of the blue. I was just started talking about the future. God's, his Holy Spirit, he poured it out on me. And it was like this other sense that I didn't even know that I had, where when God communicates with you, you hear it. It's like you're using your eyeballs for the first time. I mean, it was that clear when he spoke to me. And, like he left so many signs for me that I guess I wasn't supposed to see until that moment. But like my stage name when I was a stripper was Christian. Like literally that was my stage name for years, Christian. And somebody else gave it to me and it just stuck. And, like there was all these like pictures on my nightclub flyers of like, it was all these numbers, and he helped me in one moment, within a matter of a day or two, I saw all these signs that he left for me to basically tell me, I've been here your whole life. And I've left you all these things, and I was waiting to show them to you. So there was no way that I could deny that it was happening.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely, I'm sure it didn't hurt that I had a foundation laid when I was younger, and
Yeah.
there's a couple years I went to Christian schools and then when I went to church, but it was definitely, I have to give the credit to the outpouring of the Spirit. That was really what changed things for me.
Right. And since then, the Bible talks about water baptism. You have been taken down in the water, right?
Oh yeah, a couple times. I don't think they held me down long enough the first time.
The pool wasn't big enough.
I think they needed to exercise me under the water. Like, out of there, you demon.
Wow, that's hilarious. But you mentioned in the book you kept going back, right? So what caused the flip flop? I mean, because I'm a Christian. I was raised in the church my entire life, but I am nowhere near perfect.
Right.
Nowhere near, because he tells us there's only one perfect person. He tells us that we're not perfect. So what caused the flip flop going back? Well, was it peer pressure or, what caused the flip flop?
Honestly, it was just loneliness and boredom. Like if God didn't tell me in the very beginning that he had a person for me, I would have just dated out of loneliness when I became a Christian. I would have probably got on a dating app, or I would have gone out with some, because I was very lonely. I got lonely quickly. I went from having a lot of friends, being out 4 or 5 nights a week, always a girl over my house, always, whether it was just the girl I was just randomly having sex with or a girl I was dating, I always had a girl around. So I was never alone. And I became a Christian and I got alone. I was literally alone almost all the time. I didn't know anybody else that were Christians that were like me. I knew some really religious people I met in church, but I didn't really know anybody I could relate to. I couldn't hang out with my old friends anymore because they were partiers. And I was waiting for this girl from God. So I couldn't even date out of loneliness. So I literally was just by myself a lot. And I really realized how hard it is if you don't have community. Like you have to have community to make it, or it's just a god awful walk. And for 6 years I did it. And I white knuckled it. I did it out of determination, and my strength gave out at that point. And I really didn't mean to backslide. I really just was like, I actually wanted to make a difference in the lives of my friends. And I thought if I could do it from the inside, I thought, well, here, I'm going to give myself a little freedom, and I'm going to try to hang out with them a little bit more. And in doing so, I'm hoping to build a relationship and eventually lead them to the Lord. That was my thought process, or at least that's what I told myself. I actually had a Bible study that met in the nightclub back in 2006.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I first started to work in the bars again. I know it sounds crazy to people, but I had been out of the scene for 6 years, and I felt like God was letting me promote again. Like I got an offer to promote this nightclub, and I felt like God was giving me the green light. And so I started doing it. And I was pretty good at promoting. So all those skills came right back. And I literally just kind of took over the nightlife in Baltimore within a matter of a couple months. I was running the hottest nightclub in town on Saturdays called Casbah. And I had been leading a Bible study up until then on Thursday night. So I just moved the Bible study into the nightclub on Thursdays. And I told my doorman at the bar, I said, look, if anybody comes to the club on Saturday night that's from the Bible study, let them in for free. Don't make them wait in line. Just let them right in. Treat them like VIP. And they started doing that. And then my Bible study blew up. And all of a sudden I had like 50 people coming to my small group on Thursday nights. We were reading Purpose Driven Life. We would go out and feed the homeless after. It was really cool. It was very edgy. It was a lot like cityfam, in all honesty. But it was so edgy. And I had never backslid. I had never experienced what it was like to be a Christian and distant from God. Because up until then, I'd done really good. I just literally changed everything on a dime. And I was pretty proud of myself. I was self-righteous in all honesty. But when I started doing this new thing, I became popular really quick again. There was all these girls wanting to know me. And I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. And I slept with a girl inadvertently one night after drinking. I tried to keep it quiet. And then about a month later, I slept with a second girl. And then some people in the group confronted me about it. They found out. and
Hmm.
they were not nice. They were kind of harsh. And I was like, all right, I'm stepping down. I stepped down from the group. I was like, I can't lead this anymore. And it was like the perfect storm. Literally had, um, I was making a lot of money. I was very popular again. And it was just like, it just became very easy for me to make mistakes, like
Yeah.
specifically with women. And
Yeah.
over the next few years, I just made a mess. And I hated the way I felt about myself because I was distant from God, and I knew it, and I didn't know how to get back to him because I literally had tried everything. I went all in when I followed him. I couldn't have tried any harder. I went from being the biggest man whore in Baltimore to being abstinent for 6 years. That took a lot of determination
That
and
did.
willpower and a lot of lonely nights and depression and disillusionment. And so when I backslid, I was like, I didn't even know how to, I was like, what am I going to try again? I'm like,
Mm,
I can't give any more than I already did. So, you know, things became bad enough that I did rededicate. And like I said, I went through that same period where I was just like, I literally rented Dolphin Tale on a Saturday night. I don't know if I ever
hmm.
told you that. I'd seen every other movie in Redbox, and I went to rent a movie, and the only movie I had seen was Dolphin Tale, and I was so mad because I rented it, and I'm like, here I am, a grown man watching this kids movie by myself on a Saturday night because
Oh, yeah.
that's how bad the options are, and I'm like, this is a major problem, and I think, that's of course what led me to starting CityFam. And I look back and I'm sure it was all God's design, but yeah, I didn't intentionally walk away from God. I just got bored.
Hmm.
And I know that there's a world full of people out there that are going through what I went through, they're trying to make the right decisions. They're living for God, and they're sitting around every night with nothing to do and no one to do it
Hmm.
with. Or
Yeah.
there's a bunch of other people that are going to the bars, making bad decisions, and they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? What's the
Yeah.
alternative? What am I going to do? Stay in every night?
Yeah.
And so that's why I said City Fam is this nice middle ground where we're like, hey, look, let's become the best version of ourselves, but also let's enjoy life. Let's have some fun too, right? Because
Yeah.
if you don't have fun, you ain't going to make it long term. Eventually,
Mm-mm.
you're going to get on that dating app, call that person you're not supposed to be talking to, get a bottle or a bag or whatever your thing is, because
Hmm.
it's just too hard.
It is. And, City Fam was a big leap for you. And I just want to add a comment about when you mentioned that, you started the Bible study in the bar. I think that was a great thing. But sometimes, the devil will give us uh, information, but he'll kind of twist it a little bit, like you thought you were doing you knew you were doing a great thing by having Bible study in the bar, but you were still around that old environment. So I believe that, Satan, he see that we're doing good, he be like, hey, where's my buddy Rob? I ain't seen him in a minute. Let me throw
Yeah.
something, let me throw this delusion to him. But you didn't stay there, right? You still are doing some great things. And just like my next question for you, City Fam was a huge leap. I mean, it's like you started that and you got everybody into this. I mean, it was that was I have never volunteered that much in my life.
Well, we want you back.
Yeah, and I'm coming back.
Okay.
Wait till I get my vaccine, and I'm coming
Okay.
back. But
Okay.
how did you adjust to the change of culture? Because City Fam was based on doing something for other people who had no way of paying you back, giving selfless.
Yeah.
Just giving back. So, how did you adjust to that culture? Because there was nothing really in it. There was nothing tangible in it. You felt good at the end of the day, but I mean, how did you make yourself to feel like this is where I belong? This is rewarding for me.
Yeah. So before I answer that, I was just thinking about what you said about the bar. Jesus says, go. He says, I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves.
Mm-hmm,
And when you think
mm-hmm,
about
mm-hmm.
that sounds really dangerous, right?
Yeah.
If you're a sheep among wolves, that's real dangerous. You could get eaten. Christians in general don't want that. We don't want to put ourselves in danger. So what we do is we get into a faith community, we go to church, and then we get into our little Christian bubble. And then we never go back for the other people. And that is not what God told us to do. That's not what Jesus
Right.
said. You leave
You're
the 99
absolutely right.
go after the one. So for me, going to the bar, even though it cost me years of my life when I backslid, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now had I not
If it wasn't
done
for
that
that
before.
experience,
Because
yeah.
I had to go when I went into that environment. I did backslide, but the pain that I experienced, everything that I felt, about what I thought about myself, what I felt like God thought about me at the time, all those things are now motivation for me to not fall back into sin as I'm doing city fam, because I'm still around a lot of temptation. But
Yeah.
because of that experience, I'm able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like God is more concerned with people dying apart from him than he is about Christians sinning, or making mistakes when they're living on mission. And we have to just trust him that he's going to protect us and go into those environments. Now I'm not saying Christians to go to bars by themselves, but when you go together like we do at City Fam, there's safety in numbers, and it becomes very effective for reaching people, meeting people where they are instead of waiting for them to come to you at some building once a week on a Sunday and live in some way that's completely foreign to them. So I think we need to flip the whole model on its head. But, I guess for City Fam, for me, part of it was definitely selfish reasons. I started organizing the social events because I wanted something to do. And I am an evangelist by heart. I want to see people know the Lord. He has radically changed my life. He's a maximizer of your gifts. Whatever you have, he will, if you have a stick like Moses, he'll part the sea with it. I'm seeing what he's doing with my life. And I felt like I didn't have a lot to offer, but I was willing. And so I want people to know him. I definitely want people to not, be separated from him for eternity, because I do think that that's a possibility, whether you burn forever or I don't know. But, if you die apart from him, you're not going to receive eternal life. You're going to miss out. And so I don't want anybody to not know him. He is the truth. And for me, it was like, I wanted to tell, lead my friends to him. And the only way I really knew how to do that was inviting them to social environments that I was creating for my friends from church, because, I was like, if they come to that and they meet these guys from, they're going to like them and they'll end up, in church, and then the pastor can deliver a message in a way that I really can't. And hopefully some of them will respond to it. And that's exactly what happened. And then I also thought, well, if they get saved, now my social group is going to grow, because I didn't really have a whole lot of people that I related to. Like I said, the really religious people, I didn't get down with. I didn't feel like we were the same people. But I was like, these guys are like me. And now if they meet Jesus, we're going to basically be one and the same. We're both coming from the same place. And now I have more people to hang out with. So it was really kind of that thought process where I just wanted my friends to come to Jesus, so I'd have people to do life with,
Yeah. And that, you have really made a turnaround. I've watched you for years, since City Fam started, and even before City Fam. I think we had like a couple of meetings that I attended at your nonprofit events and your volunteer events. And I'm like, wow, this is a really great thing. But what it has evolved into, did you ever think it would really, get this big? And I'm sure there is more growing that you guys have, you will go through or whatever. But did you ever think it would get on this scale? Did you ever think you would commit to it this long? Because I really think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. First off, let me say you've been such a great friend to me and great supporter of the organization. So thank you, Jeanette. I really appreciate all that you've done for us.
I really do believe in you guys. I do. I really do.
Right from the beginning, I've always talked big. Like I was like, we're going to do this and it's going to spread all over the world, because I've seen God's power. When he called me, I knew what he was capable of. So I guess I thought I always talked about it being big and thought it had the potential to get big because I saw the need for it. But, no, I didn't think it would take this long, for sure. 6 years and this is just of the time that we had a name. We were really doing events even for a year or two before that. So it's really been like, 7 or 8 years of we've been doing this. So I thought it would have happened probably faster, but did I really think it was going to spread all over the world? God gave me a vision. I think it was about 18 years ago. He told me about this building. It was in Canton. It's a restaurant now, a restaurant bar. And he said, one day you're going to be in this building doing something outside the box, and people are going to come from all over the world to see it. and I didn't know what it meant. I just remember thinking, like, why would people come to a bar from all over the world? But he left this impression on my mind, and now I understand it. It's going to be this. It's going to be called home. I talk about it a lot on my social media, but it's going to be a bar, but very different than any other bar in the world. It's going to be a place for all the City Fam members to gather on the weekends, to have fun without regret, but also, probably everybody listening has a friend or friends that they could get to a bar a heck of a lot easier than they could get to a church.
Right.
And in that bar, if there were people like you and me, and we were just there doing karaoke maybe on a Friday night, or drinking a glass of wine and seeing some music, a cover band on a Saturday, they would be like, they would figure it out faster.
Right.
Versus trying to get them into some building that they really don't want to come to anyway. So home is going to be that place for us, because I was looking for this place when I became a Christian, and it doesn't exist. I went to Christian coffee houses, and I, went to different youth program, young adult things, and there's just nothing out there. So home for me is going to be that place that people can go and have a social life, and not, do things that they're going to regret on Monday, but also bring their friends to that need to make changes. And I think it's going to really send a signal for us, as City Fam is spreading into other parts of the world, that when people come to Baltimore to learn how to run their City Fam chapter, that they're going to go to home and they're going to see it, and they're going to be like, holy crap, I can't believe a place like this exists.
Wow.
It's going to be a bar. It's really, in all honesty, it's going to be a church disguised as a bar. People are going to meet Jesus in that place left and right, but it's going to look like, we're going to serve beer. We're going to have wine. We're going to have alcohol, one small part of it, but we're going to have alcohol alternatives like Cava and Kratom. And we're going to have, Saturday night, we're going to have cover bands, but on Wednesday night, we're going to have like Jeremy Camp come in or whoever. Like to me, there's no, why put it in a box and say, oh, it's just a Christian, whatever. Why call it that? What does that do for us? That only hurts us. You leave it no, a lot of Christians are going to come to it, but this is just going to be a place that you can become the best version of yourself.
Oh, okay. So, and then I think that'll be a great way to get a lot of people to church, get them to Bible study and different things like that, because you don't want to beat people down, with your beliefs. You have to introduce them to it slowly, I really do believe, like when I invite people to church with me, if they say, no, I don't want to come. And if they're just so convicted, I'm like, okay, maybe one day these words that I've spoke to you in one way or the other, regardless if we're somewhere, like you mentioned, your, house, your idea for your place where City Fam members and people can meet, it'll be something, some type of thing like that will get them to Christ. I don't think you have to beat people over the head with your belief. But when we're talking about City Fam, I left on a work trip for a few years and I came back, and there's City Fam Houston, there's mission trips. Wow, it was like overnight.
Yeah, but it feels slow to me. It felt like it happened slow, but no, I'm grateful. Like social media is really the power of it. Getting the message out and finding people that are like-minded. It's really been good for us. I had a video go viral on YouTube, and that really helped us get the message out, because I mentioned City Fam in that video, and then people started reaching out, wanting to know more about it. But it's great. I'm so grateful that God, gave me the vision, because it's been a lifesaver for me in so many ways.
Yeah. And like I said, you're just like grinding. I'm like, man, he is just really just doing this thing, just getting out there and promoting it. So how, let's talk about the mission trips, Honduras, I've not been on one yet, and I'm strongly emphasizing yet.
We're going to get you there.
Yeah. But how did you organize that? I've seen all the pictures, you guys on the plane, you're in the airport coordinating and, organizing everything. That is true leadership. You did all those things. I'm sure you had a lot of help, but how was that?
lot of help, like you said, lot of smart, talented people. Like Paul says of the body, there's an eye and I might be an
Many
eye
members.
or a nose, but I'm only one part, and without all the other parts, nothing works because God gave me a little piece of it, and I'm grateful that I get to do that piece. But there's just so many people that are, really making it happen behind the scenes. But yeah, the mission trips are great. I look forward to doing more. Hopefully, we're going to go to. I don't know if we're going to go this year. We're talking about it. I guess we're trying to still see what happens with COVID. Definitely next year we'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Love to do, Central America is where we like to go. Nicaragua is probably where we'll go next, hopefully. And, one day we'll hopefully have a mission house. That's the dream is
that'd be great.
Yeah. Build something down there in the jungle that we can host teams and, you sell Nicaraguan coffee at home and use the money to support our relief work. That would be the dream. But I love the trips definitely change you because once you see that level of poverty, really kind of makes you appreciate what you got,
Yeah. And you are really big on social media. So how many of those, past worldly friends, I mean, how many of those guys and gals did you bring into City Fam with you? I mean, how many of those relationships have you transferred over to this new way of life?
I don't know. I would say there's probably dozens of people that God has, used me or this model to bring in. It's hard to say. A lot of people go to Epic Church. That was my home church. It still is my home church. I've been attending another one recently, but I don't know, dozens for sure. And what I'm most excited about really is just this model. So it's called Go. We actually named it. It's called the Go method. We're writing a book, me and Nicole, who runs CityFam. And we want to really just kind of take it to churches and show them this better way of really evangelizing versus just saying, hey, stop inviting people to your church or small group because for the most part, they're not coming anymore. And all the studies show that the church is losing relevance, and just start doing social and service events with get into a small group of people that you really enjoy being around and start doing social and service events and invite them to those opportunities because that's so much of an easier invite and it works really well. So I'm excited about, finishing that book and then sharing that system with other churches. When I look at Acts, again, if you go back to the first church, the way they did church was very different than the way we do church. Like it says that they gathered together every day and meeting in each other's houses, devoted themselves to the fellowship, the teaching, the breaking of bread and the prayer. So like every day they were hanging out, they were eating together, they were fellowshipping. And it says the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So we don't really do that in this country. We get together once a week. We might go to a small group, one other night a week or one day a week. And then one other night a week, we get into a small group, but we're not really doing life together because if we were, I wouldn't have been sitting around bored and lonely every time I committed my life to Christ. I was literally, there was nothing to do, so I think the church has done a really good job throughout the years of meeting people's physical hunger needs. But now people are really hungry for community. They're looking for, that's why the opioid epidemic is the way it is. People are bored, they're bored and they're lonely. And if we can meet that need with Fun Without Regrets events and opportunities for them to really get involved in their communities and give back, I think we would see a huge revival take place. And that's what I would like to be part of.
Wow. And I know, my belief of the church is the people, right? It's not the physical building, it's the people. And if we can encourage the people to get together and, learn about Christ. And I always tell people, if I could choose another life, it would be the Acts, right? In the book of Acts. I want that life. I want to get together daily. The people, they sold all their possessions. They put it at the in the apostles' feet. Yeah. And just, they didn't worry about this is yours, this is mine, this is yours. I mean, that would be so cool. I remember worry about that.
Yeah, when I first became a Christian, I read that passage and I'm like, what a cool way to live. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, the people they just put everything at the apostles' feet and they used it as they needed. It wasn't like this is mine, that person over there is hungry. I'm still going to feed my family. I mean, wow. I mean, that
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
yeah, that was so cool. But yeah, and like I said, you have gave up so much. I know, you've lost a lot of things and you probably don't even think about that anymore because you're doing a good thing. And God uses people to who he know will be courageous enough to do his will, right? I mean, he used Saul, who was then, Saul, but then became Paul. He used those people in the Bible because he knew those are that one he's going to do it. Moses is going to be courageous to do this. Paul is going to be courageous enough to do that. Timothy is going to go with him. He's going to be courageous. These 12 that I chose. I mean, it's just an amazing, and you are doing a great thing. You are doing a really great thing. So, I mean, what does it feel like? I mean, do you ever look back at your life and be like, I mean, from what we've been talking about on the last almost hour, I believe you wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, the dream hasn't been fulfilled yet. The vision that God gave me, I look forward to, seeing that happen. For me, it's cityfam, being functioning at a higher level, making a larger impact, getting go into the churches, really teaching them the system, and then opening home, because home is going to be such a big piece of the puzzle. It's going to literally send shockwaves through the Christian world, because it's going to just change the way things are viewed. I think a lot of people reject Jesus not because they're rejecting Jesus; they're rejecting the way he's been packaged. And there's something about the way he's been packaged that they don't like, because if they really knew Jesus, if they really met Jesus, they wouldn't reject him. Sinners love Jesus. The prostitutes and the tax collectors loved him. They love being around him. Something in the way that we packaged him, they don't like. So we have to figure that out. And I believe that home will be part of that, because it shouldn't be so that if you're doing the right thing, you have to be lonely, or you have to be boring, or you have to be lame. No, we're gonna have more fun than you. That's the way I want to say it. Like, I enjoy life more than you, because of Jesus, because I'm living in my purpose. Now, look, I don't want to cross certain lines. I don't want to sin because I know there's consequences, and I'm trying to get to this place. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's very selfish. I'm not sinning because I'm, just because I'm trying to please God. There is that. But I'm also not sinning because of me. I want to fulfill my purpose and live, become the highest version of myself. And you should want the same thing for yourself. But hey, let's go out and see a band this Friday night, or go see, let's go have some fun with each other, and, invite as many people to join us as possible. And I think we could, imagine this whole big movement of people that are just, we're daily pulling people into this thing, and they're seeing, wow, this is different than I thought it was. This is not the way I viewed religion. And I hate to even use that term, because it's not that. But really just kind of blowing people's minds. It's showing them a completely new paradigm. Yeah. And that's what I think Jesus was the master of that. And I think that is what we have the opportunity, what we're capable of doing. And so I get excited when I think about that, because I think we're close. I think there's a good chance that home could open this fall. And man, I get really excited when I think about people flying in and experiencing that and going, wow, I can't believe there's people like you. I have to recreate this culture in my town. Yeah. And then helping them do that, and then helping that chapter partner with the local churches to really do something special, where I often explain cityfam as, people say the church is the hospital for the broken, and I love that. But I look at cityfam as the ambulance. We are the ambulance as we go out and bring the people back.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
Instead of waiting for them to crawl through the emergency room, which is what most churches do. No, let's go meet them where they're at. But we're going to make it fun, and we're going to show them a lifestyle that they're going to be like, wow, okay, I can relate to that. They'll see, a lot of times they see us hanging out and they're like, okay, that's a lifestyle that I could relate to. Yeah. And then a lot of times they just kind of come along and they join us. Now it can be dangerous too, because when you're going into those places, you have to have good accountability. But again, that's where the numbers come in. So.
Yeah. And, and one of the things that, I really enjoyed about City Fam was the idea that you guys got everybody together, and just introduced them to a whole new way of community, right? Because the things that I love, and, I believe that God speaks to us through his word, the Bible. Right. And I love reading my Bible. I love studying. Now, I've been a little bit guilty as not studying as much as I should. But one of the things that I really enjoy is, like, I'm telling you, if I can create a community like the book of Acts, of course, there's no more apostles because he only chose 13 because one with Judas. Right. So I believe that getting people together with the strength and the courage as yourself, Rob. I mean, I don't know if you realize or not, but what you've did over the last several years, that took a lot of courage to just drop everything, and I know you mentioned sometimes that you might have fell on a little bit of hard times, but you didn't go back. You still stayed the course. And I really do believe that, one of my good friends used to always tell me, Jeanette, this is going to work out if you faint not. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And that's what I've seen you do. You have Nicole on board. I've been watching you. I have been your biggest fan over the last couple of years, even though I've been out of town. But I have really been watching you. And I'm like, man, it takes a lot of courage for somebody to just drop all this fame and all this popularity and say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I can get people doing good things by serving Christ and just being that community advocate. So that took a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to just give all that up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think perseverance is the thing more than anything that, I look at that it's, I felt like it's required. But I love the verse that you mentioned, and it says, it doesn't say, it says you will reap a harvest if you don't give up, if you don't lose heart, faint not. It doesn't say if you don't sin. It doesn't say if you don't get tired. It doesn't say if you don't, whatever, get depressed. It says if you don't quit. All we have to do is not quit. All you have to do is keep trusting, one foot after the other. I mean, because look, I've tripped 1,000 times. I'll get depressed and I'll masturbate, or I'll drink, drink too much, or I backslid there for years. I just never quit. My heart was always close to God. I was always wanting to be in the center of his will, whether I was making the right decisions in the moment or not. I just didn't quit. I never gave up. That's why, for somebody out there, that's the main thing. Like we're going to mess up. We're going to sin. We're going to get tired. We might get depressed, but just as long as you don't quit, you'll make it. God's factored all those other things in. Every screw up. Not to say that you should screw up, because I do think there's consequences, and it probably prolongs the promise from being manifested. But just don't quit. That's it. It's that easy. As he just says, just don't give up. And that is, it's simple, but it's not easy, because a lot of times, and I'm sure you get these moments where you're like, you're working as hard as you possibly know, and you don't see any fruit. Nothing, no evidence of anything happening. And it's just, that's where you start to go, why am I doing this? This isn't worth it. And that's the moments where you just really, for me, the last few years, my quiet time in the morning is crucial, because if I don't get alone with him and talk to him and make sure that I get reassured that, okay, you're right where I want you, even though I might not be seeing the things that I want, I might not have the wife. I might not have my finances, might not be where I want to be, or whatever. Maybe City Fam isn't even as organized, but I'll get my quiet time, and he comforts me and he reassures me. And then I can give one more day. And then and then next morning, do the exact same thing. And if I just keep doing that, it's kept me from not quitting.
Right.
So,
Right. And it's all about repetition, being faithful, repetition. My mom used to always say, baby, prayer changes things. So I'm always praying, I'm like I mentioned, I can't stress that enough. I really do believe that prayer perseverance and patience. I'm learning how to be patient, learning. And, it's not an easy thing. It is not easy at all. But, I just think it builds character, that resiliency, that tenacity, those things that make us great people, like a statue has to be chiseled and it has to be sculpted. I mean, you just can't throw a slab of mold or clay out there. This thing has to be delicately created. And that's the way I feel about you, Rob, that you have been delicately recreated because you've just continued to just keep going and going and going and going. And I know God has been blessing you and he's going to continue to bless you. And City Fam is already great, but I know there is much more things coming from you guys because you're living by example. And you're not perfect. I'm not perfect, but you are living by example. And I believe it's just an amazing thing to see.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jeanette. I received that and I claim it.
Claim it.
I am. And when home opens, I want you to be there with us on the grand opening.
I will be there. I will definitely be there. If I'm still here, I will be there, know. So as we kind of close up here today, just kind of give us your, and this is definitely going to go viral. I know it is, because how many other people out there who struggling, I always tell people everything we talk about here, someone else needs to hear. They need to know it. They need to receive this message. So, yeah. I mean, if you can just tell somebody, you mentioned it several times throughout the show, but if you can just tell what is that one piece of advice? I mean, I'm sure there was many times when Rob's like, you know what, I just can't do this no more. But what was that one thing that just kept you going back?
I mean, I guess, just believing that God wasn't done with me, like when I rededicated, I stood on the promises of God, and that was with the help of some really good people. After I made the mess, I felt like God was done with me. And I remember my pastor telling me, he makes all things new. Mm-hmm. And you got to really want it, that number one, if you're out there and you're wanting to change, you got to really want it to the point where you're willing to, cut off everything that would prevent you from doing it. That's what I've had to do a couple times. I had to do it twice in my life after I backslid, to the point where I was like, I was going to like kids' birthday parties with my pastor because I just wanted to be around them. But yeah, if you go all in, I mean, God's going to meet you at that level.
Yeah.
And, it's never too late to be who you might've been. I love that saying, like, God, wherever you're at, whatever you've done, if you give it all to him from this moment, he will take it all and create such a beautiful masterpiece with it. That's what he's doing in my life. And I would just encourage people, to start today, because a lot of people don't, they think they get a case of the some days and they never begin. And then they get to the end of their life and they regret, not doing what they felt like they were supposed to do. So I don't know if I could give it to anybody, I would just say, start today, go all in and see what he does.
Yep. If God will take you to it, he will get you through it, and there, to me, you just can't fight a conviction. You just cannot fight it. If something is really, really strong in your heart and you're wholeheartedly convicted in doing that thing, there ain't nothing that's going to take you from it. Nothing. Not even, nobody can, remove that conviction if it's that seed that's being planted in your heart, to just change the world for the better and, do great things for other people who have no way of repaying you.
Yeah. I'll see him at the pearly gates and we'll party together in eternity.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rob. I mean, this has really been a blessing. And I mentioned before, I am one of your biggest fans. And, because I like the idea of community. And when I first started volunteering with City Fam, I'm like, man, there's nothing for me to do. What organization can I, get involved with? And then that's when you were, City Fam was involved in, and then you would do like the, on MLK Day, you would do events, and we would go, like prepare meals for the homeless. And, we'd be out there doing all kind of stuff. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, it is awesome. It feels like a high effort,
Yeah. So, thank you, Rob, for joining us today. And I want to thank you to all my listeners today for being here. And, I know this story will bless you because Rob is just an amazing person. And we're going to make sure that we put all his contact information and organizational information on our thumbnail page so you can reach out to him and contact him with any questions or learn more about City Fam. Get out there and volunteer and, just doing amazing things. And I can vouch 100% that you are getting involved with a great group of people. It's definitely in organizations where families can get together. And I mean, is I can't speak enough about it. I cannot wait to this whole pandemic culture is over so we can start doing those good things again. It was being a part of City Fam was one of the best times of my life because I met people that I didn't know. You get to learn about different walks of life and learn about different stories and get out there and volunteer. Because one thing, if I would not have been a part of City Fam, I would not have known where do I go feed the homeless, where do I go do service day, where do I do all these things? It's like they figured it all out for us. I didn't have to think about it. All I had to do was show up and get involved. So I really do appreciate you putting all that stuff together, Rob. It was just a great opportunity, and I cannot wait to get back involved with City Fam. So
can't wait to see you.
Yeah. So thank you, Rob. And I really do appreciate you sharing your passion with us today.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on, Jeanette. I'll talk to you later.